Hey, how's it going, everybody? So today we are going to do something that's a little bit of a throwback. I haven't done it in quite a while, and we're doing a little twist to it. I have this cute little glass bowl in the shape of a sleeping cat. Do you see it? Very shiny, very smooth. I found this at a thrift store and I made a mold of it, and it turned out really cute, and then I made a bunch of them. It was awesome. I took them to a craft fair. I sold them all. I hate selling out of something because I always feel like there's that slight potential that I could have sold one more or something like that. So I like to have more than necessary usually. But then when I went to go look for this mold, I couldn't find it anywhere. So it turns out that I had to remake it, which is fine because I'm a little bit better at making molds now and I want to make it a little bit nicer, a little bit cleaner. So the first step we're going to do today is covering this in latex mold builder, building a mold, and then we're going to fill it with beautiful flowers, ferns. The one bigger challenge that we're going to be giving ourselves today is that we are going to try using makeup to color resin. So I went to the dollar store. This is probably pretty expired makeup. I don't know how long it takes to expire, but I've held on to it for a couple years. Maybe it says on here. I don't think it says. But today we're going to be using really cheap makeup, mostly eyeshadow, I think, to color resin. So I have a lot of really fun colors. We're gonna do some red, some green, some blue. The really great thing about using makeup in resin is that I'm gonna be able to try out a million different colors and see what I really like. Pigments for resin at the art store are usually really expensive, so this is a really good option for just trying out some new stuff. I don't play with pigments in resin too often, but I feel like I'll learn a lot with this project. So basically how I'm going to be working today is the biggest project is going to be this cat, but I'm going to be working on crystals along the way just to test out all the different colors of eyeshadow that we're going to be using in the resin. I'm not really positive if it'll work perfectly. I've seen situations that people put things in resin that's not supposed to go in resin and it never cures properly. It stays sticky and squishy and unfortunate. That's definitely something that we're going to try to avoid today. I'm not really sure how this is going to go, but I want to take you along on this process and we'll learn together, I guess. If we want to know the brands of what I'm using, this is Ariposa, dollar store. Kylie Beauty, thank you, dollar store. But this one was $3, so high class dollar store. And then we have this one, Yabaolane, Truth Love Shadow Crystal Diamond Eyeshadow Cream. I like that they have little stars on them. So I don't film every layer of liquid latex that I add to the bowl, but I would say it would be about 10-12 layers of liquid latex over a couple days, and I make sure that the mold has dried completely before I try peeling it off the bowl so I avoid any damages or stretching. One amazing thing about liquid latex is that if there are any holes or tears, it's not a big deal because you can just add a little bit more and fixes it really easily. So that's for anyone curious on how I make my molds, and I'll leave the liquid latex link in the description if you want to buy some yourself. And for the very first layer, so the very top of the bowl, I decided to add some clear resin with some torn up pink petals, some bellflowers, and some green fern. So some pink, some purple, and some green I think is a really strong color palette for the top of the bowl. So I only make this layer a couple inches and I try to fit as much dried flowers that I can in there. And then I plan for the next layer to just be resin with pigment in it. So while I wait for this first layer to cure, I also pour a couple crystals that I want to test out a few colors with to help me decide on what layer I want to pour next inside of this cat mold. So for the first couple of eyeshadows that I decide to use, I try mixing this dark blue with this shimmery white color, hoping that it would mix together nicely and create a nice lighter blue. So I noticed while I was mixing these eyeshadows together that there were little flakes of eyeshadow that weren't blending into the resin. It was coloring it really nicely and gave it this amazing sparkle. No matter how hard or long that I stirred the resin, it just wouldn't dissolve. I'm not sure if that's because I didn't use enough resin or I used too much eyeshadow for that, but I just wanted to get a really dark pigment, and that really worked out. This is almost as opaque as possible, and to really test that out, I added some gold leaf to see if I could see any of that shining through after they're cured. For the next test crystal, I decided to scratch out some of this light pink eyeshadow. I find it really pretty. One thing about eyeshadow is that they're all so sparkly, and it's a really consistent shine. It's not too glittery, and all the powder is really fine. So even though this is really cheap stuff, it sparkles really beautifully, giving it a really nice metallic-y look. I actually wanted to try a little bit of a darker pigment. Since this is just a test crystal, I wanted to see how far we could go. So I tried to mix it into the resin as well as possible, pour it into the molds, do it as the same as the first crystal, where I put a little bit of gold leaf inside of it just to check the opacity of the pigment and see if it's an effect I want to do later in my cat mold. Because often I really like pink and gold together. They usually merge to make really nice tones of bronze. So these crystals did take a little bit more than 24 hours to cure. I assume that's just because we messed with the chemical structure of the resin, putting some makeup in it, but then eventually they were just as hard as all my other pieces, so it just needed that little bit of extra time. And while I was unmolding it, I noticed that they were super opaque, which is a really good thing in my opinion, because I can always adjust it to be less opaque, but I can't ever make it more opaque if it's not as pigmented as possible. You know what I'm saying. And I think they looked really good. I was really proud of my points here. Don't forget to always poke at the air bubbles with a little toothpick when doing crystals. You want to get those sharpest, most dangerous points as possible. But I did notice that a lot of the chunkier parts of the eyeshadow sank to the bottom, and you can see at the front of the crystal all of this white pigment and all of these larger chunks of pigment, which just added a really unique texture to it, but is something that I have to keep in mind if I don't want that effect in other pieces. So I assume using less resin or stirring more, even though I stirred as much as possible, and I don't think I could have stirred any more, but if I added more resin, maybe it would have evened out. It's definitely something that I can play with, but overall these turned out really great, and I'm ready to pour the next layer for my cat mold. Want to go with just a slightly lighter pink, maybe the pink without any added colors, and see how that looks, because the shimmering is exactly what I wanted. So using a way higher ratio of resin in this next mix, I decided to add some dried flowers into this layer as well. Just a few pink petals and a little bit of lavender. And usually I like to go for a dark base, so I test out some of this green shimmering eyeshadow in another crystal to see how that turns out. I decided to add some of this baby pink glitter that I have just because it matched the cats so well. I wanted to see how it would interact with the mix, and that's the exact point of these test crystals. I had a little bit too much extra resin, so I filled this other crystal mold just half full and dumped a bunch of gold eyeshadow into it to see what would happen. I hardly mixed it in, so I just assumed that it would all fall to the base, but I was curious on what textures we could make this time. So these turned out to be a really nice foresty light green, and they almost made the cut, but I decided to go for a little bit more clear resin in the cat mold. Used a bunch of gold leaf to fill the layer and combine it with some more green fern and pink petals that I used on the top layer, just to give it a little bit of consistency throughout, because I think we were really successful with that pink eyeshadow middle layer, that I just want this to be as perfect and pretty of a piece as possible. wanted to try out one last eyeshadow. I tried mixing some gold with the resin, and I just sprinkled a little bit of that on the bottom. I think that really connects the gold leaf and the pinks, and it's very transparent, so it just adds a sparkle, and it adds a few of those larger flakes of eyeshadow that I mentioned that can't be mixed in properly, and I think that just all looks really conducive with the gold leaf. So I was actually really happy with that decision. It just left these really subtle streaks of gold throughout it. And these were probably also my favorite crystals that I made. They look like blocks of gold. Even though they're really textural on the front, I think they look really shiny. I think they demonstrate the shininess of the eyeshadows the best out of all of them. And then we finally get to the best part where we get to unmold this beautiful sleeping cat that we have been working on for days and days. Not completely done with this project, but we get to finally see what's going on in there. I love when I get to glaze things in resin because this gives me the time and the chance to just look at every little aspect of the piece, really appreciate how things work together and what happened. And it's a process that I can't rush and that I just get obsessed with looking at because basically you're just making it shinier and beautiful. It's just my favorite part of the process. So I give the piece an overall top coat, but then I go back and use a Dremel to just fix the bottom edge of everything and then fix the top edge and give it a couple more touches of resin. It was so fun working with all this different makeup to color resin. I'm actually so surprised and pretty pleased with how everything turned out. It definitely has its downsides, but it allows me to try so many different colors of resin. And I'm dying to play with more of the blues, and that green is so pretty, so that will definitely be a base in one of my future projects. And I'm really excited to experiment more with this. If you made it to the end of the video, you are the most appreciated. And I just wanted to show you a couple other projects that I'm working on right now. So when I went to Value Village last, I got a lot of stuff. Very exciting. Kind of went animal crazy, but I found this beautiful candle that I'm just covering in liquid latex right now. It doesn't actually look like that. It's a bear. It's a really cute, really good sized bear. I can't wait to turn this into resin. It's gonna be so fun. And then I have these ones I already poured. It's for next video. It's very exciting. These elephants, or one elephant, two elephant. Is it an elephant or is it a Pokemon? We'll see. And then there's an even smaller one. I'm really nervous about this one because small things are so hard to do, and I doubt its trunk and little legs survived, but hopefully they did. I am just obsessed with animals right now. I don't know what that's about. But anyways, thanks for watching.